Hi everyone, welcome back. Now in today's lesson, this is the first infectious disease that you're going to learn, which is called cholera. So for every disease you're going to learn in this chapter, every infectious disease, we are going to look at, the first one is causative organism. Number two, the sign and symptoms of the disease. Number three, transmission means how it can be passed from an infected person to an uninfected person. Number four, prevention and control of the disease by biological factors, social factors, and economic factors. Then lastly, we're going to look at the success in the prevention and control of this disease in the world. Okay, first, let's look at the causative agent, causative organism of cholera. So the causative organism of cholera is caused by the bacteria Vibrio cholerae. Now, when you look the name Vibrio cholerae in a book or in my PowerPoint, which is in a typed version, the species name is always in italic, so like this, Vibrio cholerae. But if you're going to write in your homework, in your class test paper, any written species name must be underlined. So in this way, Vibrio, underline Vibrio, the spacing no underline, and underline cholerae. So this is the format of writing species name in handwritten form, must be underlined. Okay, so where do they infect? The site of action is in the small intestine wall. So in the wall of the small intestine. So how does it infect? So it first enters into the small intestine, it multiplies, means increase in number, and then they secrete choleragen, which is a toxic chemical. So because it's cholera, so the toxin that is secreted by the bacteria Vibrio cholerae to cause the illness is called choleragen, an agent that causes cholera. So choleragen. Okay. Now, since we're talking about bacteria, let's look at the bacteria shapes. So we've got many different types of bacteria. So we've got bacteria that's in sphere, that's spherical. Okay, and sometimes there can be single or two bacterial cells joined together, or a string of bacteria joined together, or tetra whatsoever, but they are all in spherical shape. We also got rod-shaped bacteria, which we call them bacilli. Bacilli are rod-shaped, cocci are sphere-shaped, okay? Bacilli. So just for your information on it. So they can join into a chain form, or they can be in single form, or they may have flagella. Now the third type of shape in bacteria is spiral, or we can also call it curved. So like Vibrio cholerae is curved shape, or sometimes I call it comma shape, right? Then you got spiral and spiral as well. So Vibrio cholerae is a comma shaped bacteria which contains flagellum. And because it contains one flagellum, it's highly motile. Motile means can move. Highly motile means it can move very fast. Okay, so let's talk about choleragen. What does choleragen do in the wall of the small intestine? So first, it disrupts the function of small intestine epithelium. So the wall of the intestine is made of epithelial cell. So it disrupts the function of the epithelial cell at the wall of intestine. And after that, it causes salts and water to leave the blood into the lumen of the small intestine. And because of that, it causes severe diarrhea. Okay, please pay attention to the spelling of diarrhea. Diarrhea. Okay. Double R and one O. This is for UK spelling. Now, if you say it without the O, it's the US spelling, right? Then eventually it may cause death if there is an excessive dehydration from this person, right? So this is a more detailed explanation of how choleragen can lead to vomiting and diarrhea and also dehydration. So let's say Vibrio cholerae. So this is one Vibrio cholerae bacterium found in the small intestine lumen. So it will secrete the toxin called choleragen, right? Choleragen. And this toxin then binds to a receptor on the cell surface membrane of the small intestine epithelial cell, right? So then this will cause a series of reactions to happen in the cell, which is not important for you to know. And eventually it will cause chloride ions to be pumped out from the epithelial cell into the lumen of intestine by active transport. So every time pumping is called by active transport, and it's against concentration gradient. So because chloride ions is a solute, when it goes out, it can reduce a water potential and leading water to also follow chloride to go out into the lumen from the cell by osmosis down water potential gradient. At the same time, sodium ion, because it's positively charged, so the sodium ion will also move out of the epithelial cell by diffusion, okay, by facilitated diffusion, because it's positively charged, is attracted to negatively charged chloride. So it follows chloride. So both sodium ion and water will follow the chloride ion and go into the lumen of intestine. So because of that, there's excess water in the lumen, causing watery diarrhea. So sometimes we call them rice water because it really looks like rice water. Because it's so much of water that goes to the intestine, and then the feces actually turns out to be like, it's very watery. It's like, you know, when you want to cook the rice, you wash the rice, right? So after you wash the rice, you look at the water on top, it's like slightly whitish, cloudy. So it's almost the same. You know, the diarrhea that come out from it is very watery. It looks like rice water. So that's why it's called rice water. Okay, diarrhea, rice water, and vomiting. When there's too much water in intestine, so may lead to vomiting. Then this will lead to a very severe dehydration and also loss of electrolytes like sodium ion and chloride ions. Okay, electrolytes are very important in the body for muscle contraction, for nerve impulse transmission, for the function of kidney, and a lot of other parts of the body. So this is an example to see the effect of choleragen on intestine. Now on the left side, I believe this is the internal organ of the rat. Okay, so this is the rat fat with choleragen, and this is the rat fat with not fat with choleragen, so it's control. So you see the one with fat with choleragen, it is swollen with a lot of water in the lumen because of the effect of choleragen, causing sodium ion to be pumped out, and therefore chloride ions and water follows. Okay, now after knowing the effect of choleragen, we're going to look at the meaning of these two words, symptoms and signs. So when we talk about disease, we'll say, okay, what is the symptoms and sign of the disease? So there are difference between these two. Symptoms is experience a patient goes through due to the disease that is not detectable by physical examination. That means a patient will experience it, but when you examine the patient, if you're a doctor, you examine, you will not be able to see those experiences. For example, diarrhea. Now see this diarrhea spelling without O because it's US spelling. Okay, so with O is UK, without O is US. Both are correct. Okay, vomiting. So you got headache, nausea. Nausea means you feel like vomiting. All these things is you experience, so the doctor cannot know. So you have to describe to the doctor. So these are symptoms. Signs. Signs is like something that you can trace, you can see. So it's a visible expression of the disease that is detectable by physical examination, like rashes on the skin, high temperature, sunken eyes, and so on. Okay. So these are the symptoms and signs of cholera. Profuse means intense, a lot. Okay, of watery diarrhea. So this is spelling, US spelling for diarrhea. So, and then stomach pains, leg cramps because of loss of electrolytes, mild fever. Every time you got infection, you will usually have fever. Okay, because it activates immune response in the body. Fever helps to activate immune response in the body. Vomiting, okay, because of a lot of water in the intestine. Sunken eyes and cheeks. So you see, these three are due to excessive dehydration. So sunken eyes and cheeks, no more water. Very dry mouth, dry tongue, okay, and decrease in urinary output, so less urination, right? Less urination because of excessive dehydration. Water from the internal environment of the body is being taken out, lost into the external environment in the body, which is the intestine. Right? So therefore, we have lack of water in internal environment, so therefore less urine, because urine comes from internal environment of the body. Okay. Now the next part is, let's look at the transmission of cholera. That means how the pathogen is being passed from infected to uninfected person. So you need to explain the process. Now, to explain the process, the best way to explain is, of course, to use a flow chart. A flow chart to trace the movement of the pathogen from an infected person all the way to an uninfected person. Okay? So infected person can be a carrier or sufferer. Carrier means a person that carries the pathogen but doesn't show any signs and symptoms. So it's just like the COVID virus. Some people, they are carrier but they are not sick. Okay, some people, they are sick, so when they're sick, they are sufferer. Both of them are infected with the pathogen, right? So infected person happen, so because the Vibrio cholerae are found in the intestine, so therefore it will come out together with the feces, which is actually the watery stool, we call it rice water. So this feces can go into the water and contaminate the water. So the water becomes contaminated water. Means pure water, now it contains the bacteria, Vibrio cholerae, so that's why we call contamination of the water. That means it contains impurities in the water. All right. So when this water contains Vibrio cholerae, what happens is that it may be discharged into the sea, so the fish may pick it up, the shellfish may pick it up. So the shellfish are the fish that contain shell, either outside the body or inside the body of this aquatic organism. So like prawns, shrimps, crab, okay, oyster, this is squid. Squid has got shell inside the body, so all of them are shellfish. So they may pick up the bacteria, and let's say if you eat them raw, of course the chances of you ingesting those bacteria that are alive is very high, right? So it's very dangerous to eat raw food if the raw food is contaminated, right? Contaminated food. So it's foodborne. Then if the contaminated water is used to irrigate vegetables and we pluck the vegetables and we don't cook, we eat them as raw salad, so it also will contain the Vibrio cholerae. Or from the water, we take the water from the river and we didn't actually boil it, we didn't treat it, so the bacteria is still alive and we drink it, so ingest it into our intestine. Okay, and one more thing is when the person go to the toilet and pass motion, okay, defecation, and then it clean the anus with water and the hand may be contaminated with the bacteria, and then you use this contaminated bacteria and handle the food also will be contaminated, right? So therefore the main ways of transmission of this bacteria is by fecal oral route. That means from the feces, which contain the bacteria which comes from infected person, it goes to the mouth of the uninfected person, either through waterborne, okay, through the contaminated water, or foodborne through the contaminated food. So it's all by fecal oral routes, okay, waterborne and foodborne. So after knowing how the Vibrio cholerae is being transmitted, right, from an infected person to uninfected person, then you will know how to carry out the preventive measures and control measures of this disease. So in our syllabus for prevention and control cholera, candidate should be able to discuss the roles of biological, social, and economic factors in the prevention and control of cholera. So of course, first we want to know what's prevention and control. Then we want to know what is biological, social, and economic factors. Now, prevention is measures taken to stop a person from being infected by pathogen. So prevention means you do it before you get it. So before a person is infected, infected, so it's an uninfected person, we prevent the pathogen from getting into the body of this person, getting onto or getting into the body of this person. So this is prevention, okay? Preventing this person from being infected. Now, control will happen after the person is already being infected, okay? So measures taken to prevent the transmission of this pathogen from an infected person to an uninfected person. So this is to control the spread of the disease, okay? So prevention and control. So control also includes treatment. So we treat the person who is infected so that the bacteria or virus is no longer in the body. So therefore, this person will not be able to pass this pathogen to another person. Right? We control this person from passing to another person. Okay. So control is focused on person who is infected. Prevention is focused on the person that's uninfected. So how to prevent and control cholera? So just now we say that you need to go discuss the social, economic, and biological factor in prevention and control. So what are these three factors here? Every time we want to control or prevent a disease, we need to take social, economic, and biological factors into consideration, because all these three are involved in prevention and control of disease. Now, social factors have to deal with the society as a whole. Now, when you want to prevent a disease, what do you mean by deal with society? Deal with people. What kind? What kind of details about the people? Their living conditions of the people, the behavior of the people, okay, and the education of the people. So if you want to control disease, you have to look at the living conditions, the behavior, education. So for example, behavior, put a movement control order, like for COVID virus. So we cannot go out from the house. If we stay in the house, we only go out for important purpose, like going to see doctor, going to buy food, okay, go to the bank, go to the post office to do important stuff. Only other than that, we cannot go out, okay? Economic means we need money to control disease one. So it's dealing with money, use the money to provide public facilities which can help to prevent and control the disease. For example, educate people. So how to prevent the disease? Stay at home, okay? Cover with masks when you go out, okay? For example, wash hands thoroughly. So this is called, you need to educate people so they know what to do, right? Having campaign, right? Campaign means what? We have got campaign, we put posters, we put in radio, in TV, during break time, to tell people what they need to do. And even now in our SMS, we've received, okay, information from government is what we need to do, okay, during this MCO period, right? Movement control order period, to prevent the spread of COVID virus. And also have got the medical facilities. You need money for medical facilities such as vaccination, antibiotics, and other therapies, all right, to prevent and control the disease. Now, what about biological factor in preventing and control disease? This is a very important one, because since infectious disease is caused by pathogens, right, living organisms. So biological means have to deal with the living things. So we are focusing on the life cycle of the organism and transmission of that pathogen between infected and uninfected person. So we want to stop the spread of the pathogen based on its life cycle and transmission cycle. So if we know how it's being transmitted, then we know how to stop the transmission cycle. All right. So prevention and control will need to consider social factor, economic factor, and biological factor to ensure that it's successful. Right. If any one of the factor is not there, like no money, people are not cooperating, we do not know how the virus is being transmitted, then we will not be able to stop and prevent and control the spread of the disease. So let's look at prevention and control. So when you know the transmission cycle of a disease, then you know how to prevent and control disease. So I would highly advise you for this chapter, for all the diseases that you want to learn, the transmission cycle flow chart is so important that I'll highly advise you to make a summary chart make a summary chart of this transmission cycle. And from this, you can top it up with how to prevent and control the disease, and also to top it up as in the same chart as whether the control and prevention is successful. That you will actually summarize the entire disease in one chart. All right. So now this is the transmission cycle. If you want to prevent and control disease, how you can do it? So I'm going to show you now. Now, because you know the transmission cycle, we have to stop handling food with contaminated hand. That means to say you have to wash hands, isn't it? After defecation, right? Then we have to prevent the feces from going to the water in the river. So that means to prevent the water in the river from being contaminated. So we must have got a sewage treatment plant, right? I'm going to explain that in more detail later on. Then also, because the water is clean, then it will not be contaminating the fish and shellfish. Or if the water is not clean also, if we use the water in irrigating vegetables, okay, and then the shellfish and fish are contaminated, we make sure that we have to cook the food, right? Because cooking will kill the bacteria. Then as for drinking water, if we make sure that the water that we drink is treated, is chlorinated, is filtered, bacteria are killed with UV lights. Then at home, you've got this special device that filter and kill the bacteria. This, okay, or put chlorine into it. So all these are purified, treated, clean water, chlorinated water. Then if you drink it, or you boil the water as well, okay, or you boil the water, then the water will be safe from the bacteria. So as long as you know the transmission cycle, then you will be able to know what are the possible preventive and control measures, right? So here, let's look into detail of prevention and control. So A, we need to have got proper sewage treatment. So what is sewage treatment? Now, the water that come out from a house, whether it's from the toilet, okay, or it's from the sink, from the shower, toilet, okay, from the kitchen. So all this water will drain to the drain, isn't it? So after it drains into the drain, all right, we will not release it to the river directly, all right, because they may contain bacteria and contaminants. So all this drain will bring all this water, okay, will be drained into a water treatment plant. Okay, so in a water treatment plant is when all the bacteria eventually will die off, and all the contaminants will settle down. So then when the water is being released into the river, it is clean and safe, right? So this is called sewage treatment. Sewage treatment, what is sewage? Sewage are actually water that's released from the household and as well as small factories. So they are called municipal waste, municipal wastewater. So proper sewage treatment is to remove contaminants from municipal wastewater that comes from the housing area as well as a factory in a town, okay? So proper sewage treatment. B, clean water supply. So make sure that there is a water supply that is clean to the population. So it needs to be piped water, treated, boiled, chlorinated, or purified drinking water. So that's safe. Okay. C, drink bottled water. This is for travelers. Okay, if we travel overseas to a developing country, then we make sure we don't simply just drink water from anywhere. We have to drink bottled water, mineral water. Okay. Then D, treatment with antibiotics, which can kill the bacteria. Right. Now, we also have E, hygienic disposal of feces and vomit from patients, because those feces and vomit from patients definitely will contain Vibrio cholerae, so we have to dispose them hygienically. You cannot simply throw it into anywhere. Okay, we have to maybe wrap it up. So wrap it up in a plastic bag and throw it. Okay. F, wash hands and soap after defecation. So after going to toilet, you have to wash hands with soap and water. And G is dealing with food. Make sure your food is safe from the bacteria. So peel the fruits before eating it, wash the vegetables, and cook the food very well. Then H, in developing in countries that they still use well to obtain water, and the toilet is actually a separate part, a separate latrine, okay, outside in the open space there. Then they must ensure that the well is, they dig the well at a safe distance away from the latrine so that the water, okay, and the feces in the latrine will not have opportunity to go into the well water. So the distance away is very important, okay? This for developing country. Then I identify carriers and prevent them from working in the food industry, because we know that this Vibrio cholerae is a feces mouth disease, okay, a transmission cycle, okay. So therefore, we have to prevent the contamination of food in the food industry from being passed from an infected person, either to their contaminated hands or feces, okay, unlikely feces, but mostly contaminated hands, okay, to the food, okay. Then J, of course, is education. Educate the people, educate the public in the preventive measures and the control measures. Okay. Now you see that in those points for prevention and control, there are certain points from F to J that I put in bracket. Put in bracket means to say that if the question asks you about the preventive and control measures, then you need to list from A to E as the main one first. All right, because whether it's developing country or developed country, A to E are important. Then for F to J is more for the developing countries, right? Because for developed countries, we already know we need to wash our hands, we need to cook the food, we need to cook the water. So we already know all these things. So therefore, from F to J is more for developing countries. That's why it is secondary answer, right? So you have to give the primary answer first, which is A to E, then secondary answer, if the question is a 5-mark question, then you can consider F, G, H, and so on. So this is example of education using a campaign and poster. Right? I obtained it from a poster. Make the water safe. So for developing countries where they don't have got clean water supply from the pipe, so how to make the water safe? Let's say they take water from river or from the well, so they have to filter the water through a clean cloth. Then after that, they have to treat the water with chlorine or with a bleach. Actually, chlorine is a bleach. Treat it with a bleach. So at the correct proportion, okay, 5 ml to 20 to 25 liter of water. Okay, then they make sure that they have to boil the water. So this is one of example of educating the public. Right, putting this poster everywhere in the village so that people can see, okay, passing the pamphlets to every house, okay, to the family. Now, mortality rate of cholera. Mortality means death, okay, death rate of cholera, if left untreated, is 50 to 60%. So this is a statistic provided by WHO. So a person with cholera, if not treated, may die. Okay, so usually what kind of treatment is needed? Okay, before that, what is treatment? Treatment is measures taken to cure a disease or alleviate symptoms once a person has the disease. So to cure a disease means to kill the pathogen that's inside the body. Alleviate symptoms means to make this person feel well again. So no more diarrhea, no more stomach ache, no more fever. So to alleviate the symptoms. Okay, so to alleviate the symptoms or to cure a disease, right? So it is a way of controlling the disease. Why? Because we are focusing on the infected person. Remember, prevention is focusing on the uninfected person so that they don't get the bacteria. Then the control is focusing on the person is infected. So making sure they go well, making sure the pathogens are killed in the body, making sure they don't pass to other people. Okay. So if the treatment kills the pathogen, therefore the infected person, so if the treatment kills the pathogen, sometimes it just alleviates the symptoms, right? If it kills the pathogen, then this infected person will now have no more symptoms, okay, because there's no more pathogen to cause the symptoms. He's no more a reservoir, means his body will no longer be carrying the pathogen. And because of that, there'll be no more transmission, means he will no longer be able to pass the pathogen to another person. So that means to say he's no longer an infected person, right? Because it's free from the pathogen already, because all pathogens are killed. So infected person will no longer have symptoms, no more reservoir, no more transmission to other people. Okay, so let's look at treatment of cholera. Treatment of cholera mainly is rehydration. Why? Because they lost so much water from the internal environment of the body into the intestine. So we have to rehydrate them or else they'll die. Okay, so that's why treatment is very easy, but they have to get the treatment or else 50% chances of dying there. Okay, so how to treat them for rehydration? By giving a solution containing sodium ion or salt, glucose, and water. So this is called oral rehydration therapy, means by drinking this solution, or it can be intravenous rehydration therapy by drips into the vein, right? Of course, in very serious case also, we will give antibiotics, right, to kill the Vibrio cholerae. Okay. So the antibiotics include tetracyclines and chloramphenicol. Now, this is a picture showing the intravenous rehydration therapy. So I think this is a very serious cholera epidemic in Africa. So that's why so many of them are taking the intravenous rehydration therapy. So we know that in this therapy, the patient is given a solution which contains salt, glucose, and water, right? So we want to know what is the function of salt, glucose, and water in this rehydration therapy. Now, in a passage in the British Scientific Journal, 5th August 1978, so it is stated that the discovery that sodium transport and glucose transport are coupled in the small intestine so that glucose accelerates absorption of solute and water is potentially the most important medical advance in this century. So research is so important in improving medical treatment and health of a person recovering from disease. All right, so this was discovered in 1978, right? That if a solution contains sodium and glucose, all right, the sodium and glucose will be transported together, we should speed up the transport of water. So let's look at how this is done. So this is a wall of intestine, the membrane of the epithelial cell intestine, and this is a carrier protein which got two binding sites, one for sodium and one for glucose. So how is sodium ions being transported into the cell? So sodium ion will bind to the carrier, okay, and then glucose will also bind to the carrier. So once both of them bind together, then this carrier will change shape so that now both sodium and glucose will be co-transported into the epithelial cell. So sodium and glucose are both solute. So when it is found inside the epithelial cell, okay, then it will actually reduce water potential, causing water to enter epithelial cell. So this is how it causes rehydration of the internal environment of the body. Okay, so this is a picture of an oral rehydration salts. You see that the main composition is the salt, sodium chloride. So we also got potassium chloride, okay, and then trisodium citrate, then also glucose, okay. So it's supposed to be taken, added in 1 liter of drinking water and drink it the whole day, okay, 1 liter of water. So what are the function of the glucose? I hope you can see it. So function of glucose, function of salt, is salt or sodium ion. The function is to replenishes the electrolytes because there's loss of a lot of sodium and chloride. Okay, then so this salt here is actually sodium chloride. Yeah, of course. Salt also is co-transported with glucose, And both of them will reduce the water potential of intestinal epithelial cells to increase water uptake by osmosis, because the body loses a lot of water. So we have to rehydrate it this way. So that's function of salt. Now, function of glucose is what? It's been explained just now already. It is to accelerate the uptake of sodium ion, because sodium ion and glucose are transported together. So both of them must be transported together. So if you don't have enough glucose, then your sodium cannot be transported into the cell. So therefore, we need glucose to accelerate the uptake of sodium ion, since sodium and glucose are co-transported in small intestine. So that will lead to reduce in water potential and increase in water uptake by osmosis. Okay. Now, what about function of water? Of course, it's for rehydration. So to replace the water that's lost because of the collagen, or for rehydration. Okay. Now, this is to show traveler how to prevent infection in places where cholera is found. Right. So we travel to Africa, travel to certain developing countries. So as a traveler, what you need to take, how you need to take precaution from getting cholera is make sure we drink bottled water or water that's been treated or boiled. Okay, and food that we take must be thoroughly cooked. Don't eat raw food, and we need to peel. Individuals should peel their own fruits to eat. Okay. So when you wash your hand, you wash the fruits and you peel it. Okay. Be wary of ice, because ice, right, can be contaminated with bacteria. Raw fruits, ice cream, and street foods, all this must be careful, because they're cold, they're not hot, they're not boiled, right? So bacteria may be alive if it's contaminated. And of course, wash hands frequently and thoroughly. Okay. Now this shows the cases of cholera in the world, right? Now, you see, there's a lot of this word called pandemic. So I want to take this opportunity to introduce you to this term, so that next time when you come across infectious disease, and then you read, you know the meaning of the term pandemic, and as well as epidemic and endemic. All right. Now, epidemic. So all these three terms are used to describe an infectious disease, or not only infectious, is to describe disease. Okay. Epidemic describes a disease that affects a large number of people at the same time. So epidemic, describing a disease that affects a large number of people at the same time. So when you learn the gas exchange and smoking chapter, we already say that smoking is epidemic, right? Because smoking is a self-inflicted disease, right? So it's a type of disease, and it's epidemic means it describes this disease affect a large number of people at the same time. Right? So it's epidemic. Now what about pandemic? Pandemic is an epidemic disease that spreads across the whole world. So the whole world get it. Like now we got the COVID virus. It spread across the whole world so rapidly because of the ease of traveling, right? The ease of traveling by flight, right? This moment, this town get it. So the next moment, the traveler take on a plane and go to US, UK, Malaysia, everywhere. So the whole country will get it. I mean, the whole country, the whole world will get it. Okay. Then what about endemic? End means inside, isn't it? Right? Endemic means describe a disease which is always present in a low level in a given population or region. All right. In a region, let's say in Malaysia, right? Dengue. So dengue will be always present in certain area in small number, right? Okay. So here, this chart shows you the cases of pandemic, right? It started in the first pandemic of cholera is 1816, right? Then after that, 1852, 29, so third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh pandemic is 1961 to 1975, right? After that, we still have some more. So what are the countries that are affected? India, so from India spread to, isn't it? India, Myanmar, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Thailand, Indonesia, Iraq, Turkey, Mediterranean Sea, Europe, America, Canada, I see not, okay? Second pandemic goes to Europe, America, Canada. Then China, Spain, Russia, China, Japan, India, Africa. So some countries keep on appearing, right? Because they are developing countries, and you know that there's some facilities, basic facilities are not established, well established. Okay, so cholera cases and death officially reported to WHO in the year 2000. So this is the in the year 2000, right? Not shown in previous diagram. So it was reported. It was reported from 27 countries in Africa. Okay, 9 countries in Latin America, 13 countries in Asia, 2 countries in Europe, and 4 countries in Oceania. Okay, you go and Google search where Oceania is. So among all these countries, Africa accounted for 87% of these cases. So why is it Africa, there's keep on recurrent of this disease? Then if a disease keep on recurring in a place, then we will have to go and look at what is the efficiency of prevention and control measures taken in the country, and then you will know why. Okay, so this is a condition for the spread of cholera in developing countries and refugee camps. So why is it they are happening? Okay, of course, number one, there's no money. This is economic factor, right? No money for proper sewage treatment. Sewage treatment needs money. It's also a facility to society. So this is an economic and social factor, and also biological factor, because it also affects the transmission cycle, preventing the bacteria from transmitting. So this point alone involves social, economical, and biological factor in prevention and control. No money for proper sewage treatment, no money for clean water supply, right? Same thing, 3 factors involved. Lack of education on how to prevent and control the disease. So this one involves social, because it involves people, educating people. Involves economical, because it involves money to educate people, to have campaign in TV, radio, to print poster, okay, to educate people. Then also involve biological, right? Why? Because it is educating them that they know how to prevent and control, to stop the transmission cycle. So it's also biological. Then number 4, inadequate cooking, right? And washing in contaminated water. So if they don't have clean water supply, a lot of them take water from well, take water from river, and river will be highly contaminated, but they still have to use the water because that's their only source, right? So chances of getting cholera from the contaminated water could be very high. Okay, now let's look at the overall view and summary of the disease cholera. So the pathogen is caused by Vibrio cholerae. Methods of transmission is foodborne and waterborne. So please memorize this. Global distribution is mainly in Asia, Africa, and Latin America. Incubation period means the time taken for the bacteria, after the bacteria infect a person, until signs and symptoms are seen. Until this person gets sick, it's called incubation period. Time after infection until this person shows signs and symptoms. So it can be 2 hours to 5 days. Okay. Site of action, wall of small intestine. Symptoms and signs, severe diarrhea, giving rise to rice water, loss of water and salts, dehydration, weakness. Treatment is oral rehydration therapy, intravenous rehydration therapy, and antibiotics mainly. Methods of diagnosis, this one I haven't mentioned just now. Microscopical analysis of feces. Now, because these Vibrio cholerae are alive, still alive in the feces, and they're highly motile, and the feces is actually not like our normal feces, semi-solid. It's totally rice water, right? So in the hospital, they will collect this specimen, right, rice water, and then send to the lab, diagnostic lab, and then in the lab, one of the fastest way to diagnose the presence of this disease in a person is to take a drop of this fecal water and then view it under the microscope, and then when you see that bacteria is highly motile and then spinning very quickly, that is the diagnosis of the Vibrio cholerae. Yeah, highly motile. Then, okay, annual incident of worldwide, this is only for general knowledge, no need to memorize, 3 to 5 million people get it. And out of them, how many people die? Mortality rate, 100,000 to 120,000 people die per year in the whole world. Okay. So video time. Now video time, you view the video on your own. These 2 videos are specially selected that after viewing, you will have got a very clear picture of what cholera is all about. It's very interesting and it really helps you to understand and better. So I highly encourage you to click on the link or click on the link in my times to view these 2 videos. And they are also available in your Dropbox as well. Okay, you can go directly there and view them. They're very short, only 4 minutes and 2 minutes. So make sure you view both of them, which will highly improve your understanding of this disease. Okay, now, of course, we want to look at past year question and see what are the points you need to learn to write in order to score. So I've got like 5 questions here, 5 past year questions for you to see. Okay, question 1. Describe the mode of transmission of cholera. So transmission always is from infected to uninfected person. Describe means you must tell the whole story. You need to tell the whole story because it's described. If you say state, you can say foodborne, waterborne. But describe means you have to describe from how it happens, okay? So let's look at the answer. So mode of transmission of cholera, so it is the bacteria pathogen of Vibrio cholerae, found in the feces of infected person or in the sewage containing the feces from infected person. All right. Then this bacteria is ingested or taken orally by an infected person in the food or water that's contaminated. So you see, this is a full description. You have to describe how. So therefore, foodborne and waterborne got no mark because they're supposed to describe keyword. So they also accept fecal oral route because it's from feces to the food. So fecal oral route is 1 mark if previous two marking points are not given. So if you say fecal oral route is 1 mark, through contaminated food and water is another mark, so 2 marks. Now, question 2, describe how Vibrio cholerae is transmitted from an infected person to an uninfected person. So similar, right? Similar to previous question, but the answer is more detailed. So let's look at the answer. So it is 1 mark for infected person with contaminated feces and 1 mark for uninfected person. Okay, so therefore 1 mark each. So infected person, what happened? You see, again, the keyword is the same. Either you talk about feces or sewage, contaminating the drinking water, cooking utensils, vegetables, crops, food. Okay. So if you don't write feces, they accept diarrhea because diarrhea is feces, right? Okay. Reject human waste unqualified because CO2 is also waste, right? Okay, is a waste from aerobic respiration. Accept house flies landing on contaminated feces also can. Okay. I didn't mention that one because this is in certain years not accepted in mark scheme. Okay. Now, 1 mark for uninfected person, what is it? Eating contaminated food. Okay, uninfected person eat contaminated food or use contaminated utensils. They use the water that's contaminated to wash the utensils, right? Of course, not for us lah. For developing countries, when they use river water, well water for washing. Okay, drinking contaminated water, right? Or bacteria enters water in context of drinking. Reject infected food or water because food and water cannot be infected. Only organism can be infected. Food and water can be contaminated. Okay, so you know when to use contamination, when to use infection. Okay, I stands for ignore handling contaminated food. Handling means you handle, not just go into the body, right? So you must consume it, isn't it? Okay, so this one is interesting. Fecal oral route is 2 marks. So in this particular year, they accept fecal oral route as 2 marks. In the previous question, another past year, they accept fecal oral route as 1 mark, right? So my advice to you is write more detail, okay? Question 3, it is important to know how pathogens are transmitted in order to develop effective control measures. Explain how this knowledge is used to control the spread of Vibrio cholerae in human population. Okay, so just now I mentioned before, as long as you know the transmission cycle, you will know how to prevent and control. So this question asks you the same thing. So based on transmission cycle, how do you control the spread of the Vibrio cholerae? So they're actually asking about control, okay? So pathogen is most vulnerable when in transfer between the host, okay? Most vulnerable, so that means we can prevent them from entering our body by breaking the transmission cycle. So that's when they're most vulnerable during the transmission. They may not be successful in being passed from one stage to another stage in the transmission cycle. So 2 maximum mark for the following control measures. So we must have sewage treatment, sanitation, correct positioning of latrines. So these have to do with ensuring that the municipal waste, the feces, will not contaminate the river water. Then do not use human feces for fertilizer. This is a new point, okay? Right? Piped, treated, boiled, chlorinated, purified drinking water. Accept sanitized or clean water. Ignore cooking water. Accept water treatment with UV or ozone. Okay. So as long as you can kill the bacteria, so all these ways are actually to kill the bacteria. So this is a latest way, also acceptable. Bottled water, water treatment plants upstream of sewage disposal. Water treatment plants upstream of sewage disposal means when you build a water treatment plant, you make sure that it's upstream of the feces, so the feces water will not flow up there, because water is flow from high altitude to low altitude. So water treatment plants, it must be high altitude, not high altitude, at upstream. Then your sewage disposal feces come here, will not go there, it will go down. Okay, go to the river, go to the sea. To reduce poor infected people, use antibiotics. Or actually, I don't accept oral or intravenous rehydration therapy, because this therapy only make the person feel well. It may not actually kill the bacteria. Okay, so therefore, I will still accept antibiotic as a better answer. I actually will not accept oral and intravenous rehydration therapy because we don't kill the bacteria. So how to stop transmission cycle, right? Okay. Okay, next question. Cholera tends to emerge as a risk to health following natural disaster. Natural disaster means, you know, when you see when there's a heavy rain, thunderstorm, hurricane, and then suddenly there's a flood. Then there's a danger. Why? Because the flood means what? The water will go to the toilet, right? And then from toilet it will come out. So it will go to the river. Then the river water can be used for washing and so on. So that is when the bacteria can start to spread to the river, when in normal condition it will not be able to, because of the preventive measures that have been taken, okay, like sewage treatment, water treatment plants, and so on. So explain how it is possible to reduce the number of deaths during a cholera epidemic in countries such as those in West Africa. So when natural disaster happen, how can we prevent the number of death cases from cholera? Okay, so this is this one over here. You see, this question is more specific, right? So in this question, right, your answer, you cannot say, provide a sewage treatment plant, treated water from pipe. Cannot, right? Because this is natural disaster. So in natural disaster, in this kind of condition, then you have to use the methods that are applicable during these conditions. So this is how where you need to focus when you answer question. So you have to provide boiled water, bottled water, sterile water, okay, so that you can kill the bacteria. Any other valid description of methods to remove or kill bacteria, okay? Provide oral intravenous rehydration therapy. ORT is the official short form, right? You can use ORT for oral rehydration therapy, right? that contains, you see, not glucose and salts or electrolytes, so that absorption of salts will help to absorb glucose. So this is very detailed, okay? And increases water uptake by osmosis. So this will prevent death, because you see the question says what? Prevent death. So how to prevent death? When you give them oral rehydration therapy, which contain glucose and salts will help to promote glucose to be taken in, that will reduce water potential in the cell to increase water uptake by osmosis. You know, they have to write by osmosis. So always remember, biologists' way of describing uptake of water must include osmosis, right? Down water potential gradient, because death is usually caused by dehydration. So that's why this one prevent death. Idea of rapid provision, so to provide it quickly, right? Provide ORT quickly. Provide antibiotics only for very severe cases, right? Safe sewage disposal qualified. See, they reject sewage treatment plants. How long does it take to build a sewage treatment plant during the natural disaster, right? You have to immediate measures. So safe sewage disposal means these people, they're infected, so make sure their vomit, their feces are disposed hygienically. That's called safe sewage disposal. So it doesn't contaminate the water and so on, okay? I think this is the last question. The total number of cases of cholera in Americas and Europe during 2005 was 34. Explain why cholera is unlikely to be transmitted in developed countries. So they're saying that the cases are very low. So why is it low? So just now we are talking about natural disaster, what we must do. And we also talk about in Africa, what you need to do. So now in developed countries, why is it the cases are low? So they must talk about the facilities that actually prevent and control the disease, okay? So because the transmission cycle is broken, right? So how is it being broken? They have got sewage treatment plants, mains drainage. So you've got the drainage means the longkang, okay, the drain, so the big drains. So from all the house, the main drain and go to a treatment plant. So the water doesn't flow into the river directly, okay? It must be treated so that's free of contamination. All sorts of contamination of not only bacteria, free from mud, free from chemicals, toxic chemicals, okay? Then it's released to the river so that the aquatic organism will not be killed as well, right? Human feces do not come into contact with drinking water supply because of the sewage water. See, it's explaining, because of sewage treatment, human feces do not come to contact with drinking water supply. Water treatment plants are built, so it's drinking water is piped into homes from the treatment plants. And drinking water is also chlorinated, treated to kill the bacteria. Okay, so you see now, prevention and control itself, it depends on what the question asks. Then you have to write the answer based on the question, right? Overall, you learn all the methods, but if you talk about developed countries, what are things you need to talk about? You talk about travelers, then what are the methods? You talk about natural disaster, then what are methods? You talk about developing countries, what are the methods? Yeah, and then why in developed countries they still have failed in, they still fail and therefore they're still recurrent of disease. So what are the things in prevention and control that's not well done and why? Okay, so with that, we've completed this chapter, cholera. Okay, so let's recap what are the points or subtopic that we covered for this disease. We have looked at causative organism, which is Vibrio cholerae bacteria, signs and symptoms, right? And mainly diarrhea, rice water, vomiting, and dehydration mainly. Transmission cycle, prevention and control by biological factors, social factors, economic factors, and finally, the success in prevention and control, okay, of a country. All right, so that's all for today. Thank you for being here to attend this video lesson. I hope that this video lesson is helpful for you to understand about the cholera. And please remember to view the 2 more videos from a short video from the YouTube. They are really good to actually sum up and overall and improve the overall understanding of cholera. Okay, so that's all for today, and take good care of yourself, and we'll see you in the next lesson.